You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. My guest, Koko Bako, Professor Jampo, Yunus Afuseni, and Nana Akomia. Now, I was asking that question. I don't know what your answers are.
Well, I think the president didn't say anything new. We've been talking...
Sorry, let's hear the president first.
All right.
Ghanaian artisans, for example, used to have an enviable reputation around the region. Our carpenters, masons, mechanics, plumbers, tailors were much sought after. They took pride in their work and improved upon their own set standards every time they took on a new job. How come that old, very old classroom blocks withstand storms and heavy rainfall, while the roofs of nearby newly built ones are ripped off regularly? How come that we build roads that are expected to last for at least 5 years and they do not make it through one rainy season? Before they fall, they fail, and potholes appear. The workers on the roads, the contractors and all the consultants all conspire to deliver the shoddy work that prevents us from getting to where we ought to be. We all avoid very carefully any mention of the workplace attitudes that retard our progress. I've said it at another forum, but I think it bears repeating. We arrive at work late and then spend the first hour in prayer. We are clock watchers and leave in the middle of critical work because it is the official closing time. Everything comes to a stop when it rains, and we seem to expect the rest of the world also to stop. We have no respect for the hours set aside for work. We pray, we eat, we visit during working hours. We spend hours chatting on the telephone when customers are waiting to be served, thereby increasing our labor costs. We take a week off for every funeral, and then we wonder why we are not competitive.
Right. So you heard the president.
Well, I mean, these are some of the things we teach our level 100 students when we discuss in the bureaucracy, public service with them. And like I said earlier, the president didn't say anything new. He sought to re-echo some of the issues that we've been articulating in our lecture halls and all that. But let's note this. Before militant nationalists gave us independence, moderates had asked for the Africanization of the public service, and that the civil public service was staffed essentially by white people. So he wanted more Africans to be there and some Ghanaians to be there. Now, in the lead up to the struggle for independence, one of the strategies that the independence fighters adopted was to sabotage the colonial government. And in trying to sabotage was to tell the public servants that don't do it well, be lackadaisical in your attitude, and go to work late. And some of the problems that the president, re-echoed, I mean, just do these things so that things wouldn't go well for the colonial master, so he will leave. Now, the colonial master left, and this attitude has been ingrained in our psyche. So if it is government work, you have a certain attitude to it. If it's a private business, you have a different attitude to it. And this is what this colonial legacy has hunted us from that time up till now, and we have not been able to, unfortunately, extricate ourselves from this quagmire. And it is quite problematic. But the second reason is that it's a kind of nepotism that characterizes staffing people within these public services. Who caused it? Isn't it the politicians who look for square pegs and fix them in round holes in determining who should be made members of these public service, entities, Max Weber talks about meritocracy in determining who gets into appointment as a civil servant. But unfortunately, in our dispensation, we tend to staff the public service, all manner of people. Once a new government comes in, it wants to make sure that its people are positioned at certain places, irrespective of meritocracy.
Is it not a culture rather than what you are talking about?
Well, what kind of culture is that? Culture is dynamic, and if it is wrong, we must change it. And so my point is that, and that is the reason, Samson, listen, that is the reason why governments tend to create another public service by having a lot of ministers, because they do not trust those they came to meet. Okay, so if it is MPP's time, it is believed that they would staff the place with their own supporters. Whether they merit it or they don't merit doesn't matter. But they'll staff the place with their own supporters. And once they leave, NDC or another party that comes feels that, well, we don't trust these people. So let us also have probably more than 110 ministers so that they would be really doing the work that is required to be done by the public service. But I'm telling you, if you go to countries that believes in coalition, Italy and co., they are able, coalition easily fizzles out, they are easily abandoned and all that. When the coalitions are no longer in existence, they are able to run themselves as a country for about 3 months, 6 months without government. And so my point is that if you have a powerful and a very competent and civil service that has the right attitude, you may not even have the number of ministers. You may not even need ministers.
No, but
okay, so
what do you say to the argument that would be that all of these appointments that are made, all of them come to work under chief directors who are always there anyway?
Well, but I'm the point, well, that is true. If the chief directors are there anyway, and what does a minister know? A new minister who, their constitution only
makes it... My suggestion is that the constitution only makes
your
argument.
No, it doesn't. Wait. The constitution only says that you have to be a lawyer before you become an attorney general.
Okay.
Okay. Apart from that, you don't need any competence in any area to go head it. Okay. So you rely on a chief director. And so if all are going to be relying on chief directors, why do you need 3 ministers in one ministry? Okay, it is simply because probably you don't trust the chief director and you don't also trust all the people under the chief director. You understand? And so the point is, yes, the attitude to work is very bad. And I was disappointed when the Closac had said that, tried to contest what the president said. The attitude to work is very bad. And in my view, one of the reasons is the colonial legacy I spoke about. And the second is that politicians often also pack these public services with their own people without necessarily be mindful of whether they merit it or they are called into it. I didn't get up one day to become a lecturer. I didn't become a lecturer because the vice chancellor was my father or my uncle. But you were taken through a certain process to be sure that you have the calling and you have the competence to be able to do that work. And if we are going to use this attitude and the prescription of Max Weber in recruiting people into these public services, then we would see a change. Otherwise, I'm sorry, we may be talking about it and we will be going round in circles without achieving much. And so my point is, yes, there should be a kind of reawakening and sensitization that, look, the colonial times are long gone, okay? Because like President said, the same Ghanaian, when he leaves the public service and goes to work in the private sector, gives of his best. And sometimes you work, it is 5 p.m., you're supposed to close, and nobody tells you, no, don't close.
Right.
You want to continue to finish. But look, I know somebody who lives in my area. She leaves the office, the house, around 9 a.m., gets to the office by 10:30 a.m. By 11:30, she wants to go for lunch. So 12 o'clock, she's on lunch, spends about 2 hours, having lunch. By 2 p.m., she says, I leave around and then there'll be traffic, so I have to be. And their attitude is as if they want just to be seen to have, reported and signed attendance, registered at the...
Actually, there are people we understand just go and sign attendance. They sign in and then they check out.
And so that is it. So we need that kind of a contract that we would use in checking performance vis-a-vis productivity and ensuring that people give off their best. And then secondly, more importantly...
Why are we able to do it in the private sector, but we can't do it here?
Yes, but... The public sector, Abaya Juma doesn't belong to anybody. I mean, that's the perception. Okay, so we must run it down. We must undermine it like we did to kick out the colonial master. But fortunately, we don't have a colonial master. We are governing ourselves as a sovereign, republic.
Let's hear what you have to say over the ghost names, the ghost names issue. But before you speak to the ghost names, let's hear what the Ghana Medical Association had to say and what NAGRAT had to say as well.
A lot of teachers have come up complaining that they are post-working. Actually, they have done the NIC biometric registration, and they just don't understand why they should be denied their salary at the end of the month. People are livid about it. We have already sent information out there appealing to them to be calm, because we had already reached an agreement with government that by the 15th of this month, all those people should be paid. We know that the government has really, really inconvenienced people, because it is not through any fault of theirs. They have done everything they are supposed to do. They have worked and they have complied with directives to do biometric registration. Unfortunately, they have been denied their pay. It is anticipated that over 13,800 teachers will be affected. A lot of them have started reporting and expressing their disgust and anger about the whole thing, but the numbers are not yet conclusive. As far as I know, the Ministry of Finance has already issued a statement as of last week explaining that they acknowledge there were errors in the system, because NET and Controller have already acknowledged that they made a lot of mistakes. And so they have asked NET to update Controller with the revised records so that all those people will be paid. And that information is already in the system. We have also asked all those who had not done the biometric registration as of last week to do it.
For example, they have actually even come up with a list of those who have been affected. And there are some I know personally. But not that some, I know all of them personally, especially with regard to the doctor. And these are people who are hardworking, who are always around, like my good friend Abdullah is saying, serious. So it's unfortunate. What I think should have been done is that if you want to go on this tangent, you inform the institutions properly that, look, we are giving you this period, and that if this doesn't happen, maybe this should be the first step. Then there's a second step. Because this whole exercise started as a private activity by an entity called SNEC, not government of Ghana. They decided to do their biometric registration and all that. So if suddenly you want to transpose that to become a national agenda, I think that it is just fair that you give people the room, the opportunity to amend where there are issues. I think that this should have been staggered, and then when the whole exercise is completed, then we can say that, okay, this number are ghost names. But once you haven't finished with the exercise, and then you come out and say that 26,000 are ghost names, I don't think at that particular point we have reached that level.
All right, so we had Christian Adepoku, who is the president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, and then we had Dr. Justice Yankson, who is also the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, and their complaints.
Well, I have a brief comment on this. Abolition of nuisance taxes would necessarily breed policy interventions that will be aimed at bringing about more money. And so, in my view, let ghost names be dealt with all the zeal and enthusiasm that we have as a way of making up for the shortfalls of the income that may have been lost as a result of the abolition of the nuisance taxes. But the point is, let it not affect the living.
Okay. We'll take our final break. We'll return to hear Abdul Malik.